What's up YouTube, Dal here from Zephyr War Games, bringing you number 2 of the anime month, and this time it is our first GX profile, and that one of course is going to be Ancient Gears as voted for by you. With all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. With all of that out of the way, we're going to dive straight first into this Ancient Gear OTK combo, courtesy of Crowler. So, introduced in the GX era as the amazing boss monsters that are Ancient Gears, we do play the one Ancient Gear Golem alongside an Ancient Gear Golem Ultimate Pound and 2 Ancient Gear Reactor Dragons. Now obviously Reactor Dragon is easier to summon out because it does not say it can't be special summoned, whereas obviously the Ancient Gear Golems do say that. So you need to get a card that ignores their summoning conditions to get them out. However, these are your boss monsters. You can play 2 Ancient Gear Golems should you wish. I wanted to spice it up by having an Ultimate Pound in there. The idea behind this is you want to get as many Ancient Gears to the graveyard as possible, get into Verti Anaconda, and then make your Ancient Gear Chaos Ancient Gear Giant, which is basically going to be able to smack all of your opponent's monsters and hopefully win you game from that point. Onto the utility cards. In the Ancient Gears, we do play triple Ancient Gear Wyvern. So this is the one that pretty much gets you your spells and traps. It's a shame that when this structure deck first came out, the best spell was Catapult, which could technically, in theory, be searched with Wyvern, but then obviously Catapult says as long as you control no monsters. So kind of contradicts itself, still very good regardless. So if this card is normal or special, you get to add an Ancient Gear card from your deck to the hand, except himself. You can't set cards for the rest of this turn. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. This card attached to your opponent's monsters cannot activate their effects until the end of the damage step. So, very rare that he's going to stay on the board, but the idea is that this is going to be your main searcher that is ultimately kind of get you into another Ancient Gear monster so that when you do play something like Poly, or if you do play Ancient Gear Fusion, anything like that, you've got more materials to play around with. Triple Ancient Gear Hound, talking about fusion summoning and getting as many Ancient Gears in the grave as possible. Ancient Gear Hound helps you with that. If it is normal summoned, you can inflict 600 damage to your opponent. If this guy attacks, your opponent cannot activate any spells or traps until the end of the damage step. And once per turn, you can fusion summon 1 Ancient Gear Fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. Because we're going for OTK power plays, we are only playing the 1 frame and the 1 box. Frame, when it is summoned or while it is on the board, technically you can discard 1 card and add Ancient Gear Golem or a spell or trap that specifically lists that card, Ancient Gear Golem, in its text from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect once per turn, and once per turn, if this card attacks, your opponent cannot activate spells and traps until the end of the damage step. If this face-up card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can special summon up to 3 Ancient Gear Golem and or Ancient Gear Golem Pounds from your hand, ignoring their summoning conditions. Now, obviously, the idea of this particular card is mainly to get you to your Ancient Gear Fusion. But then Ancient Gear Fusion's best attribute is to have Ancient Gear Golem on the board. So you kind of need to combo frame with with your Ancient Gear Catapult in order to get an Ancient Gear Golem onto the board. So if you do get that combo play off, then you're in a good stance, because then straight away frame then gives you 2 fusion monsters and it puts monsters into the graveyard, setting you up for Verti Anaconda. So there's a couple of plays you can do, but it's very specific, which is why we've only got it at 1. As a machine extending package, we are playing double Infinitrack Anchor Drill and double Bullet. Now the idea behind this deck, again, is to get as many monsters on the board and then ultimately to the grave as possible. Being Earth Machines do give you a benefit. Anchor Drill is if it is normal or specialed, you get to special summon an Earth Machine monster from your hand in defense. It's just a free summon. Bullet Train is if you control or all monsters you control are Earth Machines, you can special summon this card from the hand. Now that only changes once you start going into the extra deck, but you should be able to summon this before you even attempt to do that. As it is a Go second deck, we are playing triple Lightning Storm. This is the most balanced and minimalised card in order to deal with front row and back row all in one go. If you don't have this, you're going to be needing to look for a combination of either droplets if you have access to them. Dark Rule in the Maw isn't as great, But there is a card in here that will really help you out, and I'll show you that when we get to it. But the idea for Lightning Storm is mainly to deal with back row, so that then you can just punch through your opponent's monsters, because you're going to be more fearful of the back row than the front row, because you're able to kind of turn them off as and when you see fit. Triple Urgent Schedule. I couldn't find my other 2 copies, but maxing this out is near invaluable. Because you are a Go second deck, if your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you get to special summon a level 4 or lower and a level 5 or higher Earth Machine. Straight away, that's your 2 monsters on the board. Now, it does clash with Catapult, so that is one thing to keep in mind. But what Catapult does allow you to do is summon an Ancient Gear, ignoring its summoning conditions. So that's how you get Golem to the board. And if you're popping something like Gear Town, you're going to get 2 big boss monsters on there. Straight away, you can link them off, put them into grave, do whatever you need to, and kind of go from there. And then obviously, on the benefit of that, Urgent Schedule is as long as your opponent controls more monsters than you do. So as long as you do Catapult first, get your 2 monsters on the board, go into a link monster, and your opponent still has more, that's where Schedule can come in. And Schedule ultimately lets you get a link 4, or it can give you 2 link 2s. Triple Gear Town. Now, obviously, annoyingly, it's a when effect, but it is what it is. Both players can normal summon Ancient Gear monsters for 1 less tribute. Rare that that's ever going to happen. When this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 Ancient Gear monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. That is how you are going to flood the board. Speaking of field spells, we do play the 1 Terraforming, the 1 Set Rotation, and before you guys go, what the hell are you doing? We are playing the 1 Mystic Mine. Now, the reason I've put Mystic Mine in here is for the pure fact that it's one of the best cards to shut your opponent's board down, protect you from hand traps, and especially when you only need 1 monster to win you the game, you don't worry whatsoever. If you wanted to, you could bump it up to more. Set Rotation gives you access to both these cards. The only time you'd ever want to go for Gear Town over Mystic Mine is if this is going to lead you to game. If not, you go for Mystic Mine, shut your opponent down, and play from there. Terraforming can obviously be either Gear Town or the Mystic Mine. If you don't like this engine, then by all means take it out. But the way I see it, with an OTK deck that is slightly fragile, playing a card like Mystic Mine and just going, cool, normal, standby, and you're facing something, let's say like a Revolt, plus a Appaloosa with 3 negates, you just go, cool, Mystic Mine. Like, it's already too late for them to do anything, because they can activate Revolt, which is completely fine, but then when they bring Shirag onto the board, Shirag can then not activate, so it can't banish the Mystic Mine. They've got 2 months on the board, they're locked down, you get to play from there. The only damage is if they're smart enough, they go, right, okay, fine, that only turns off my Appaloosa. The second I put a single monster down, that's when they're going to be in a bit of trouble, and kind of play it from there. Limiter removal, because, you know, why not? Smashing one of your boss monsters to your opponent's face and then during damage step doubling it is always going to be good. You can't do it with this because this is unaffected by spell effects, but you can do it to all of your other boss monsters, like these guys right here. Not to mention your main deck boss monsters that go up to 6k. Yes, they will get destroyed during the end phase, but you can link them off nice and easy. But the chances are, once you activate limiter removal, you should be pushing for game. Then we've got Double Fortress. And for the fusion spells, we've got Double Power Bond, incredibly powerful, 1 Overload Fusion, and 1 Ancient Gear Fusion. Now, I cut the Ancient Gear Fusion down to 1. Power Bond is your better one, but it does require you to build up your hand, because you send cards from your hand or field to the graveyard to fusion summon a machine monster. The monster gains attack equal to its original attack. Now, I've had this conversation in the past. It will give your Chaos Ancient Gear Giant a 9,000 attack because it's part of its summoning kind of restrictions. It's not activate Power Bond, summon this guy out, and then secondary effect of Power Bond to boost it. It's all part of its one summoning mechanic, so its ability of saying it's unaffected by spells isn't before that. So it's also kind of like the fact that if you were, for some reason, to be able to get this on your board and your opponent tried to strike it, which you can't do because obviously you'd go for a fusion spell, they can't do it. They can do it because it technically hasn't hit the board, so it's still affected by said spell trap. If that made sense. Obviously, Overload Fusion is the one you want to be going for from your Verte Anaconda. You just banish monsters from your side of the field or graveyard, and then special summon a Dark Machine, which the only Dark Machine is going to be this guy here, but you're going to be able to bring out a 45k beta, plus your Verte is going to be 500 already, not to mention if you've already used Ballista, you've reduced your opponent's attack, and then off the back of that, by building up your board, you might have even been able to use or evolve a Power Bond or an Ancient Gear Fusion, and you're going to get 2 fusions on the board, or you're going to have 2 big boss monsters in the form of Ancient Gear Golem, Reactor Dragon, you name it. For the last two cards, we've got one Monster Reborn and one Reasoning. Reasoning is just a free extender, and so is Monster Reborn. Obviously, you can't bring back your Chaos Ancient Giant because I believe it can only be fusion summoned and it can't be special summoned by other ways. But it does give you that ability of bringing some of your monsters back as link material. Reasoning, obviously, because we are playing, obviously, I keep saying obviously, you can't bring out Ancient Gear Golem because it is specifically... can't be special summoned, but it does give you access to your Anchor Drill. It does give you access to your Bullet Train, as it is a 10, a 4. You've got a 3 in the Hound right there, and then you've also got your 9, where is it, in your Reactor Dragon there. So it's not perfect, but it does give you a couple of other options as well, and a couple of other routes in order to get to 2 monsters and get to your boss plays on the board. Now onto the extra deck. So we'll go over the core cards, and then we'll go over the cards that you can mess about with depending on what you have access to. So your main boss monster is going to be your Chaos Ancient Gear Giant. So as I mentioned, it requires 4 Ancient Gear monsters, must be fusion summoned, and can't be special summoned by other ways. Unaffected by spell and trap effects. Your opponent's monsters cannot activate their effects during the battle phase full stop. This card can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. If it attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage. Your opponent cannot hide from this guy. Even with the Link 4 Avramax, you can punch it in the face because it can't activate its effect to gain 4500. Woohoo! You can even get past Crystal Wing as well. For the other fusions, we've got the one Howlitzer. I would arguably play a second. I couldn't find my second copy, so definitely bump that up to 2. But Howlitzer is pretty much an immovable object, which is really, really nice. So it requires 2 Ancient Gear monsters, unaffected by other card effects. During your main phase, you can inflict 1000 damage to your opponent. You can only use this effect once per turn, and if it is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 Ancient Gear monster from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. Now, obviously, you don't really want to be using it into the battle phase and destroy it, but if you were to only have 2 monsters on the board and you needed to get more Ancient Gears to the graveyard, then the idea is you would fuse it into Howlitzer, Howlitzer burn for 1000, take your opponent down to 7000, and then link it off and go from there, and you've already built up your graveyard. Then, of course, we've got the one Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem and the one Ancient Gear Megaton Golem. Very rare that you're actually going to make these, but they are insane boss monsters that should you need to. So this is one Ancient Gear Golem plus 2 Ancient Gear monsters, and this is 3 Ancient Gear monsters. Now, obviously, this gets additional attacks if you use Ancient Gear Golem or Ultimate Pound, and this one just doesn't really give you too much. It gives you piercing battle damage. And if it attacks, your opponent cannot activate spells and traps to the end of the turn. And if it is destroyed, you can target an Ancient Gear Golem in your graveyard and special summon it, ignoring its summoning conditions. And this one lets you summon out this guy. So they bounce around each other, but they are what they are. 2 Ballista. This is the first Link 2 you're probably going to want to go into. 2 Earth Machine monsters, which is completely fine. It's what your entire deck is. If it is Link summoned, you can add 1 Ancient Gear monster or Gear Town from your deck to your hand. You can target 1 spell trap you control and 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. Destroy the card that you control, and if you do, change that opponent's monster's attack to 0 until the end of the turn. So that's obviously going to help you if you're going to smash your opponent in the face with a 9k Ancient Gear Golem, or if you're going to activate something like limiter removal on your other monsters as well. The last staple card is Verte Anaconda, purely because Overload Fusion is a busted card in a deck like this where you're filling up your grave. The other cards that you can play around with, depending on what you have access to, is you have access to any rank force you want. Abyss Dweller if you're in a graveyard format, Tornado Dragon if you're in a back row format, and then of course Bagooster if you're in a slow format. Then of course you're looking at probably the generic stuff like IP Masquerena with a Cerberus, a Phoenix, and a Unicorn. Very straightforward on that. Alternative boss monsters, BLS, because you do play a lot of high level monsters. If you're not pushing for game, you can do. And then of course your Boral Sword Dragon, because there are times where, yes, some of these you can't switch, but your other big boss monsters, you attack, you switch, you bang, you go for game. Simple as that. So it does give you a couple of options. Access code, if you do have easy access to it, is completely fine, and so is Avramax. But it does just give you a couple of other options of what you might need in order to get Ancient Gears over the line and getting you that all-important W at locals. Anyway, I hope you like this profile for Crowley's Ancient Gears. I hope you are enjoying the anime month. We've only just started. Episode 1 was, of course, Buster Blader, coming from Yugimoto and the original Yu-Gi-Oh kind of anime series. Tomorrow will be 5Ds, and I'll be putting the poll out for that as well later on, so that you can make the decision of what you would like to see this week. As absolutely always, guys, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.